Hi, everybody. You've reached S.J. Thomason, and we are going to be looking over the debate that was somewhat recently on Nathan Orman's channel called Digital Gnosis between Trent Horn, who's a Christian, and Pinecreek Doug, who is an atheist. And so, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go over a portion of this debate, and I'm going to start out sort of at the beginning of Trent Horn's position in his opening statement. I'm going to play a little bit of that, and then I'm going to play some of Doug's response. And I have to say that I thought Trent Horn did a stellar job in this particular debate, representing Christianity and Jesus quite well. In fact, the question of this debate, the big question was, did Jesus rise bodily from the dead? And the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. Here's the longer answer. Now, what he did is I could tell that Trent really did his homework by reviewing the arguments that Doug has waged against Christianity. And in his views, he believes that Doug does not have a very powerful argument against Christianity. In fact, Doug does not really make a positive case against Christianity aside from making a few assertions. Like, for example, one of the things that Pinecreek does do is he says, well, hypothetically speaking, if we only had the Gospel of John, would you still believe in Christianity? When the answer to that, to me, is yes. The Gospel of John's quite powerful. In fact, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, for whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Really critical component. Another thing is at the very end of John, John confirms the authorship of the eyewitness to Jesus, his presence, John, the son of Zebedee. And so we have an eyewitness account of Jesus, and the writings from John in that book reflect that. And so I think if we had only the Gospel of John, I'd feel pretty convinced. And then he goes on to say, well, what if we had only the writings of Paul? Well, that gives us 1 Corinthians 15, which is recorded as one of the earliest Christian creeds. And if you're not sure of exactly what 1 Corinthians 15 has said, let's go back and take a look at it. And you can think for yourself, if we only had this, would this be enough? Here's what Paul said. For what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas and then to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at the same time, most of whom are living, though some have fallen asleep. See, by saying that, he's giving us confirmation that some of the people were still present so that people could question them about these accounts. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles, and last of all, he appeared to me as to one abnormally born. For I am the least of the apostles and do not even deserve to be called an apostle because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God, I am what I am, and his grace to me was not without effect. So we have this very critical testimony from 1 Corinthians 15. But let's go ahead and listen. And I want to say hi to Craig, who's in the chat. So great to see you, Craig. Let's good listen. I don't know if you've seen this already. I think you have. I think we've discussed this because this was on not too long ago. And again, I think Trent Horn, he's a Catholic. So Doug is going to try to position this with Catholics in mind. Doug is going to try to cast some doubt. So you guys can listen to his arguments and decide for yourself if you think that Doug's arguments are powerful. I just named two of them. He has other hypothetical things that he brings up. And thankfully, Trent addressed these very well. So I also want to say hi to Susan in the chat. So let's go ahead and listen here.
We not believe this evidence? Well, Doug's approach to the resurrection is basically this. Your gut tells you that claims like somebody flew across the Grand Canyon unaided in front of 500 witnesses is false. So, therefore you should follow your gut and apply the same judgment to the claim that Jesus rose from the dead. But here's what's wrong with Doug's approach. First, our gut is reliable, but it's not infallible. If I told you that in some parts of the world, fish fall from the sky like rain, your gut might think it was a joke until you look it up online to see that that's true. There's a natural explanation, but it does happen. Since our gut feelings can be wrong, we need to use our brains to weigh all the evidence related to a controversial claim. Second, when we do that, we see that our gut rejects the examples that Doug gives because they have less evidence than the resurrection. The most obvious example against a case of a flying man would be the lack of flying man believer communities that could be traced back to sincere witnesses that founded them, which originally included outsiders who were converted. We have that for Christianity, but not the flying man. Moreover, we can dismiss freak occurrences because there's no cause capable of breaking the laws of nature in that instance to make someone fly across the Grand Canyon. And if Doug says, well, the flying man is a miracle, we can doubt that too, because God does miracles in order to communicate a great truth to humanity, and that's lacking in this case. But even if Doug's hypothetical were exactly parallel to the resurrection, who cares? Doug's argument is like asking, you say it's irrational to eat moon rocks, but if the moon were made of cheese, would you eat it? To which I would say, if it were, I might, but it isn't, so I won't. Likewise, if there were a non-Christian miracle with the same evidence as the resurrection, I might believe in it, but there isn't, so I don't. And I know there isn't because if there were, Doug would just cite that miracle and ask why Christians don't believe in it and just ignore using hypotheticals entirely. If anything, Doug's past reliance on hypotheticals like the flying man proves the unique evidential quality of the resurrection. Antony Flew, who was one of the most famous atheists in the Western world, said that, quote, the evidence for the resurrection is better than for claimed miracles in any other religion. It's outstandingly different in quality and quantity. Now, in some cases, Doug has offered real counterexamples. If you believe the disciples, he said, why don't you believe Joseph Smith and an angel gave him golden plates to make the Book of Mormon? First, even if the evidence were...
I just want to comment here. Trent does go into quite a few details on why we should doubt Joseph Smith's claims and how the character of Joseph Smith and what Joseph Smith was able to reap materially based on his claims is substantial and much different than the early disciples who had no material benefits. They were practicing illegally. They were condemned. They had witnessed the risen Christ. Joseph Smith said that he had witnessed an angel, Moroni. Now, in Galatians 1:8, it made it quite specific that we are not to be worshiping or the directions or following the directions of an angel who supposedly appears after the gospel and who shares new information, which is exactly what the LDS Church does. That alone, to me, refutes LDS-ism. But of course, we have a lot of other reasons, such as the early people who had attested to seeing these golden plates, as Trent is going to mention, suddenly recanted, took away their testimonies, and that is unlike what we have from the early apostles. So I'm not going to play back his portion on the Mormons, but I hope that you'll take a listen to that because it's very good. So here we go. And of course, that Galatians 1:8 also tells us that we shouldn't be paying attention to what the prophet Muhammad said because he claimed that the angel Gabriel appeared to him. Strangely enough, this claim that the angel Gabriel appeared to him came to him after a jinn appeared to him inside of a cave. The jinn is more like a demon, and Muhammad apparently thought he was possessed, which could be possible.
Were the same in both cases, a Christian could believe this event happened without accepting the truth of...
I want to comment on the chat here because if you guys want to come in here, you're welcome to. But I have Craig Reed. He's also going to be working on a video on Doug's flying man thought experiment. And here and Utopia Buster says, Doug is convinced his flying man thought experiment analogy is brilliant. But when I've debated it with atheists, they come up with several purposes for it. Some say it's about challenging one's belief, while others think it's about evidence. Atheists even confuse themselves. So I also see Nathan here in the chat. So this is on Nathan's channel. So in all fairness, I should definitely allow Nathan to come in. So I'm going to go ahead and post the link right here. Well, actually, Nathan, I'm going to go into Twitter and post it. I will post the link for you in your private thing. I don't want to put it all up. I don't like doing fully open rooms anymore for pretty good reason. And so let me just go ahead and get a link. And I'll swoop over to Twitter and give it to Nathan. And of course, if anyone else wants to come in, I've had others on my channel, like Susan's been on here before, and Craig's been in here. And so you guys are welcome. And Utopia Buster, I've known you for a while too. So of course, you're welcome to come in here. So let me go ahead and just post this little linky into, there he is. This is Nathan. It's only 5 o'clock Nathan's time. So here we go. Okay, so I posted a link for Nathan. And so let's keep going here, and I will see. I want to check when Nathan gets in.
Mormonism. In Galatians 1:8, Paul tells his audience that, quote, if an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to that which we preach to you, let him be accursed. In that respect, Smith may have received a false gospel from a malevolent spirit, since it contradicts established divine revelation, like when it claims God is a man who lives near a celestial body named Kolob.
Okay, so I want to welcome Nathan. So hi, Nathan.
Hey, how are you doing, SJ? Is
Yeah,
that
I
a
saw
sky
you.
where you are or a background?
What's that? Oh, that actually is the sky, but
Oh,
I
wow.
took a picture of the sky.
Oh, okay. I see. It's a fake sky.
Yeah, it's a fake sky, but it's actually quite nice in a way because it's I mean, I did it because I thought to myself, Florida has such blue skies. This is so different from where I grew up, where we had like, especially this time of year, the skies were just really dismal. So
Yeah,
what did you think about, I've
yes,
seen you, what did you think about this overall debate? And I know you've been on the channel with Doug a couple of times since the debate chatting about it. So now that you're on the channel with a Christian instead of Doug and you don't have to defend him or say anything nice, what do you think?
I think overall, as far as the debate goes, Trent made a much better case in terms of the opening statements in particular, and the use of the rebuttal rounds. The only place where I think Doug came off better was maybe in the cross-examinations. And I don't know if that's exactly, though, in responding to the opening with relevance to the cases that were presented in the opening statements, but maybe to the overall justification for holding the different positions that each of them do. But yeah, my opinion is that Trent basically did much better in the debate than Doug did. I think Doug raised some really good questions for Trent in the cross-examination period, and yeah, just Trent basically won the debate, but Doug kind of also knew that was going to happen in the first place. He just kind of wanted a conversation with Trent as well. So yeah, there's a few different things going on, but I'm happy to say that Doug lost the debate, right? But I think Doug's kind of there for different reasons overall.
Yeah, I think one of Doug's purposes is he would all of a sudden say, okay, Catholics, here's what you think. He goes, as long as you can admit that your ideas are crazy, then I'm okay with you. And I thought to myself, it's even said in the Gospels and in the Bible, it's from Paul. We've got the idea that yes, our beliefs do seem kind of crazy to some people.
It's foolishness to those who are perishing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fun. I mean, it seems strange. Of course, a person comes back to life and is born of a virgin, but I don't think that that's hardly something that the creator of the world isn't capable of doing. So.
Yeah, sure.
So where are you now on Nathan? Where are you now on Christianity? Because I know at one point you were agnostic, and then you were kind of a Christian, and then you got kind of sucked in by these kind of really judgmental types of Christians. And I think that
the evil judgmental types have still got me, SJ.
The
the Holy Spirit has not re-entered my life yet. Over Christmas, I felt like going back to Christianity a bit more, but at the minute, I'm not really feeling it. So I would probably, I'm happy to sort of call myself a naturalist and stuff at the minute, and not really, not a Christian right now.
That's interesting. I think Doug is kind of not the best influence on you. So if Doug's listening, so anyway, yeah. So yeah, Danny's commenting here in Spartan Theology. So you've got some of your friends here in the chat too.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, so should we listen to a little bit more of Trent and then maybe listen to the beginning of Doug's, or do you want to go to a different portion of the video? Like
honestly, I'm happy to play through whatever you want to go through. I think the opening statements are okay. I think most of the interesting stuff happens in the cross-examination from what I remember, but I've not watched it back, so I could be wrong. It was a couple of weeks ago, whatever.
Maybe I'll listen to the part up to the Mormon stuff, and then I'll zoom over to what Doug says on his thought experiments, because Doug does a bunch of thought experiments, and then maybe we'll go to the closing, the back and forth towards the end. Sure. Okay, so here we go. So we'll listen to this. Here we go.
It also contradicts historical facts, so we know it isn't divine. For example, even atheistic archaeologists can tell you where Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and even tiny villages like Nazareth existed and who lived there in the first century, even if they deny any miracles took place there. But nobody, Mormon and non-Mormon, can tell you where any of the alleged cities in the Book of Mormon are located. Estimates of the location of major cities the size of Jerusalem, like so-called Zarahemla, range from Central America to Southeast Iowa. The same is not true of the Bible, since Christian and non-Christian scholars agree on many basic facts related to Jesus' death 2,000 years ago, whereas only Mormon scholars believe in facts related to what Jesus allegedly did in the Americas 1,600 years ago. In fact, when we look at the evidence for Christian and Mormon miracle claims, we see significant differences between them.
So that's probably where I'm going to end with Trent, but I think Trent did a pretty good job here of addressing some of Doug's concerns. And I know that you just said that you did. So should we just? I'm going to zoom ahead and
Yeah,
go
I'm
to
happy
where
to
Doug.
do whichever. I think Trent had a good opening statement, and also he's clearly like a really well polished debater and stuff. So he had the timing right down to the second and everything, and the same in the rebuttal periods and things. Like he knows the exact questions to ask and things to say to sort of put together a really kind of coherent objection to what's just been said as well. So I think Trent did a great job in the debate.
Yeah, I have to say, I haven't seen somebody debate quite like Trent since I think William Lane Craig is the one I've always thought was the best debater out of the Christian community. But Trent's coming in there pretty strong. I don't know. Do you think William Lane Craig's a pretty strong debater?
Yeah, he's a really good debater. But I look at winning debate as a skill that's sort of a different thing from truth as well. So I'm sort of careful about these things, even though I think it's cool that these guys are really skilled debaters. I do sort of look past a bit, sort of how good someone is at responding in like rebuttal periods and things like that, because there's time constraints, and you can sort of ask and raise questions in a certain way that make it seem like your case is really strong, when maybe it wouldn't be if the constraints were removed and there was room to explore some of those things a bit more. Like there's a lot of things Craig does, for example, where he'll be like, look, I've provided 5 arguments. My opponent hasn't objected to any of them. So unless he can tear down all 5 and erect 5 arguments for the counter conclusion in its like things like that, I don't think that is actually the standard for someone to refute him. They can just say, yeah, I object to premise 2 in argument 1, premise 3 in argument, like they can just do that, and then they've essentially disagreed. So there's a lot of stuff that I don't think debate makes very productive. But yeah, sorry, I'm saying far too much.
No. I can see your points. I think those are really good points. And I think, I look at this because I'm not somebody who's a skilled debater. And so I think when I get done with a debate, and I haven't done any in a really long time, but when I get done with them, I listen to it and I'll think to myself 20 things that I could have said that were better, because thinking on your feet's so important.
Yeah. And that's where drilling it beforehand as well, becomes, it's like how much have you prepared and stuff. And a lot of that comes into it. And it's not necessarily a reflection of where the truth is. It's a reflection of, who's prepared more as well. But
yeah, that's true. And I think that's the whole thing. You want to find the truth. And so, actually, before we go back to it, I just wanted to ask you a couple other things, because I did put down on the video that I was going to mention Ukraine. And I'm just wondering, so what is your take on the world's response to what happened in Ukraine, or what's happening right now in Ukraine?
The world's response, retrospectively, I think that American foreign policy should have been tougher in the first place. I think putting troops into Ukraine, for example, could have potentially prevented the situation that we're in now before it happened. But it's sort of easier to say those things retrospectively than to actually make those decisions. Now, what's the best thing to do? I don't know. I think the best case scenario perhaps might be that Ukraine somehow, wears down Russia's kind of military capacity, right? And the war sort of peters out, and maybe Putin kind of needs an escape hatch somehow, and he's been made a pariah by world governments, so he doesn't have a reputation to lose at this point, and so I think it's very difficult from his point of view to find a kind of off ramp as well. And so I don't know if there's enough political support in Russia to get Putin out. I don't know what the state of the corruption and stuff is over there, in terms of whether people would support Putin or be against him. It's just a mess of a situation. I don't know what the right thing is to do at this point, but
Yeah. I can see my point is, if they are able to get in there and seize Ukraine, who's going to say they're not going to move after the other states? Why wouldn't they go after formerly communist states, all of them? Why just stop at Ukraine? So that's why I think that the United States has been pretty weak here. I don't think we've done enough. And that's what I can say about US. And I don't think
Yeah,
Europe really, NATO has really done enough either. I think they're sending tools and stuff, but I just think there could be more. I was very proud of the German chancellor. So
for changing their stance eventually.
Yes.
But I think they should have perhaps been. I think in the first place maybe they should have been a bit more eager in it. But I mean they've got different interests, you know. They wanted the pipeline with Russia and so forth, and you know, concerns about gas and stuff. And I think they just probably thought it seemed too crazy for Putin to try to actually attack Ukraine. That I think a lot of people really just thought it seemed too crazy to really be true. But
yeah, Putin's a little. I think he's fallen off the deep end a little bit here. He does have
Maybe,
China
yeah.
on his side, and Syria and Venezuela. Those powerhouses. I mean, Venezuela powerhouse.
I don't know that China are necessarily too happy though about his decision there in Ukraine. It seems to me at least that they're not happy about the economic situation. I don't think that they're happy about the geopolitical situation either. I think it's only of interest to them to see what the American response is going to be, so they can figure out what they're going to do with respect to Taiwan and other places that they want to take over. But I think economically and stuff, they're not very happy with his decision. And they might even take back parts of, land that historically belonged to China that the Soviet Union took off them, if it goes really pear-shaped for Putin. And
it'd be interesting. Yeah. So that was a quick segue. Now we're going to go back.
Yeah. Now back to religion, politics, and religion.
Talking about the two things you're not supposed to talk about. So here we go. Now you can see Nathan here, even in this one. So you got Nathan in the background here.
Yeah. I have an assistant named Myron, and he did some research on.
Okay. So there's I'm going to take this little.
A targeted ad.
I got to figure out how to get that out of there. Okay. I'll leave that in there for a second. Yeah. So actually, I want to mention something. So what both Doug and Trent Horn did that I thought was interesting is, wait, let me turn him back on. What they did was they both referred to somebody on the other side. And so Doug brought up something that Mike Licona said, and he also brought up something that a different Christian preacher said about some of our beliefs being, really strange and crazy. And then you had on the other side, you had Trent Horn bringing up Anthony Flew, who said that the evidence for the resurrection is pretty strong. So I thought that was interesting. Did you think that was an interesting approach?
Yeah, sort of. I think from Trent's point of view, he's got a sort of well-rehearsed opening statement that he's put together beforehand. And not that this makes Doug's opening any better, right? It's still not a very good opening, but it's worth keeping in mind that I think he just basically is making this up on the spot, really. I think he might have had a plan beforehand, is my suspicion, to come in and say, yep, you win the debate, Trent. You've won. Now let's just have a conversation. But I think in order not to make me feel awkward as the host who'd agreed to like these rules and stuff for Trent, he might have said, you know what, I'm gonna comply with the rules because I like Nathan. And I think he just made up basically an opening statement at this point. So it doesn't I don't know that it's a brilliant opening statement, but I do think it's decent considering he's just making it up on the spot.
Yeah. I think it's funny that you think he's making it up on the spot. So it's okay. So here's what he has to say. Let's listen. We'll try to be in all fairness. Now, me, of course, I have my bias. I admit it. But let's see.
Debates have happened since Jesus's times, and it's about 2 million. And over 2 million years, the resurrection debate has been very similar to each other on how it's argued. So I'm going to try something new today, something I hope is a little more exciting. But to answer the question directly, I don't believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead because I don't think the evidence comes even close to matching the claim. And I realize that's a boring and subjective answer, but I want to appeal to our commonalities. And I appreciate Trent when he said that we do have some things in common. And I think Trent and I are very much the same. I think that when we see fantastical claims, we doubt them. But I want to start off asking the Catholic viewers right now, who might be fans of Trent, if all you had was the Gospel of John and nothing else, which is basically the latest piece of canonical evidence we have for Jesus and his resurrection, would you believe it?
So I'm going to look at that
Do you
question.
want to answer as a Christian, SJ?
Yeah.
Doug's question there.
I think I would believe it. And I said that right in the beginning of this video. I think having the Gospel of John in itself would be perfectly fine and acceptable as far as I'm concerned, because he's an eyewitness. He was one of the apostles. Most people believe who are conservative Christians, who are coming from history, even that the son of Zebedee was the author of that particular book. And so and then there's evidence internally that it was authored by the son of Zebedee, as far as the count of 153 fish that only a fisherman would be interested in, and that kind of thing. And so I would be convinced with just the Gospel of John. I've actually written a blog on that. I'd be convinced with just Paul's writings, or just one of Paul's writings, like 1 Corinthians 15, if we only had a scrap of paper that had that on it. But thankfully, we've got 9 secular sources and another 33 Christian sources within 150 years of Jesus' resurrection. So his hypotheticals, to me, are kind of weak.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously would disagree with you there that is evidence which should warrant belief in the resurrection, if that was all you had, even granting, John being that person and John being an eyewitness. But I guess the purpose of this conversation is more to comment on the debate rather than us to have a conversation about that. So I'm happy to park that there if you want.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, you
so maybe we disagree on more. Maybe we don't agree on more, like Doug says.
Yeah, well, with you though, I think there is something to be said that coming from what Doug has made lots of times. He said this lots of times. He said that most Christians come to Christianity through personal experience. And he's made that really clear. And then I look at my own experience. That's exactly how I came to Christianity. So it wasn't because I was studying the Gospels. That was the farthest thing from my mind when I came I didn't even have a full Bible in my house when I came to Christianity. And so, and I read all this stuff. I found all these apologetics arguments way after, just trying to sell other people on Christianity. But he's right. If you don't feel like you're having that personal experience, you might not have that whole foundation to build on. So you said around Christmas, actually, before we go back, you said around Christmas that you were thinking of Christianity. So what is it? And I know you and your girlfriend go to church and stuff, right?
Yeah, occasionally. I think V's planning on going tomorrow, actually. It is tomorrow because the Eastern Orthodox do it on Saturday. But yeah, I mean, I sort of don't feel like going at the minute, but V is some of the time. Around Christmas, I think it was mostly because I was a bit sort of like stressed out and sad and stuff, to be honest, that I felt like exploring it again in various ways.
I have to say, aren't you in Manchester?
I'm in Glasgow now, but I was in Manchester, yeah.
Glasgow, really?
Yeah.
But are there, I've never been there, or to Manchester for that matter, but are there really pretty churches there? I mean, I'm understanding you've got historic, beautiful, big, gigantic, awesome buildings.
Yeah. There's a lot of historic churches around because of, previously, Catholic history in Europe, obviously, and then after the Reformation, becoming like Church of England or Presbyterian Church, and then Church of Scotland and stuff. There's a lot of these big church buildings around.
Because I have to say, now my brother got married in Germany. He's married his girlfriend's from the UK, and he married her in Germany. And it was because of COVID. They just did a really quick justice of the peace sort of thing. But he wants to have a bigger wedding, and I mean, he wants to have a big wedding. She wants to have a big wedding in England, and to go into one of these historic churches where apparently her family all plays the bells and does stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. People do practice like bell ringing and stuff on like quite regularly in the middle of the week in some of these bigger churches and cathedrals and things.
Yeah, my mother-in-law does that too, by the way. Oh, your friend Doug's here. So Doug, we're commenting on your video.
So for Doug, who's just arrived, so SJ, there's less that you agree on with SJ, Doug, because she said she would believe just based off of the Gospel of John. So
yeah, or just based on Paul's writings. So yeah. I did that in the beginning too, or just based on. I mean, if we just had, the thing is, we have so many sources. So should we go back to listen to what Doug says, or should we invite Doug in here to see if he wants to come?
I'm happy. Yeah, I mean, like I'm happy with it, but it's up to you, SJ. It's your.
I'll put a link here because I see.
I can send it to him, and if you want to open it up, or if you wanted me to send it to him privately, I can do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Well, I do actually, Doug. I'll admit the personal experience is exactly what brought me to Christianity. It wasn't the Bible. It wasn't the Gospel of John. So Nathan's sending you a link if you want to come in here. So let's listen to what Doug says while we see if Doug
Hopefully
wants
I've
to come
sent
in
him the
here.
right link. Not some like weird website or something. I've sent it on Facebook.
So here we go.
Really think about that question. All you have is John. The Gospel of John talks about Jesus' life and ministry, and then it goes into the resurrection and says that Jesus, there was a closed house, a closed room with doors shut, and the resurrected Jesus went through the doors and appeared to the disciples. If that's all you knew, I know it's really tough because you have all this background knowledge. You believe God exists, and you believe that Paul, what he said, and the Gospels, but all you have here is John. Would you believe it? And my guess is that we're all agreed. I bet you anything, we're all agreed we would not believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead if that's all we had.
I kind of want to say something that he's saying here that I think probably needs to be said. I think that people, especially since the 1800s and 1700s, is when this all started, where everyone decided you have to have a naturalistic explanation of pretty much everything. And if you don't have a naturalistic explanation, then whatever the event is, it couldn't have happened. And people started writing off the presence of angels or demons or any sort of spiritual world. Unlike in history, any other time in history, that's never been done. And it's still going on today. People are materialists, writing off any sort of spiritual experience. But I know people, and I'm familiar myself and have had spiritual experiences that I can say are quite compelling. And had I not had those, maybe it'd be different. But and I'm wondering, Nathan, do you ever feel like you've had a spiritual experience, or you had a dream or something that some information was shared with you that there's no way you could have known otherwise?
Nothing like information that there's no way I could have known it otherwise. But I've definitely had, experiences that I would consider to be religious experiences. But I suppose I think there are sort of explanations for those things which are natural now. And I think that they're better explanations than the explanation that was how God chose to communicate with me or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's pretty compelling. And so, I mean, I think it's the spiritual experiences are pretty compelling if you are open to the idea that there could be another dimension in this world. I think that explains a lot of different activities that go on. Like, I don't know if you've heard did you hear my conversation with Dr. Hugh Ross recently?
I know some of the stuff he believes about like demons and UFOs and stuff. And I don't really share those beliefs with him, but yeah.
Yeah, well, he talked about how first, of course, you do exhaust all the naturalistic explanations of UFOs. Like, you, for sure, if it's some little satellite up in the air, if it's something like that, and you can exhaust almost all UFO sightings with naturalistic explanations. Almost all of them are gone. But then he brings up what he says are these residuals, these little leftover situations. And he talks about how in places where the occult is practiced, like in Russia during a certain period of time, they were having way more of these sightings. And they're always like at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, well, I mean, I sort of think when he says this kind of thing that it sounds like he's adding some kind of empirical content to his explanation here, right? Which should make testable predictions. So like there's actually a certain set of things that I could do, and it will raise the probability that I will see something at 2 a.m, for example, right? And if that's the case, then, but let's do some experiments, right, and figure out if the theory does actually successfully make predictions. Is my thought. But
yeah. Okay, look who's here. Can you see?
I can't see backstage if he's. Yeah, here he is.
All right. So now that we have the debater in here, we have one side of the debater. I'm
not a debater. I'm a lover, not a debater.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen just quickly.
I should see if we can get Trent as well, but I don't know if he's.
Myself
that'd be
over
fun.
Here. Wait, I'm trying to move myself down there. Okay, there we go. Okay, so since Doug, you have the floor, and this was you as the lover.
I haven't even watched this part back since it's happened. I've watched like bits and parts, but I actually never watched my opening intro. So people tell me it was disjointed, but I haven't. Was it?
I don't think it was disjointed, and I mean, I think you like to do thought experiments a lot of times, and I think that I mean, my question was, have you ever really looked at the evidence for the resurrection?
Oh, come on. You know the answer to that.
Well,
I know it better
mean,
than most flag-waving phony Christians do, right?
and you don't find it compelling after you've looked.
Not a tad, not a bit.
That is interesting.
And that's why I use the hypotheticals, because for some Christians, it's so weird to hear that. But yet, when you apply the same type of evidence to a different claim, then it becomes understandable. That's why I do. That's exactly why I do what I do.
That's interesting. Yeah. So because I mean, I have to agree with you on something. I didn't come to Christianity because I was reading the Gospel of John.
Right.
That's not how I came to Christianity or any of the Bible. I just mentioned that before. I came to Christianity because of personal experience. So
Yeah. And so what's interesting about that question I asked in the opening, would you believe based on Gospel of John alone? If you say yes, I think you're forced to believe in so many claims in history because it's just one attestation, one guy saying they saw this, but he doesn't even name himself. But anyhow, I really don't think Christians would be consistent in their daily lives. But I do think that if you combine John with other things, then that might get you over the hump. And for you, it was personal experience. But you notice for Trent, he didn't give a direct answer, but Gospel of John wasn't a deciding factor for him. He didn't say yes or no, but he didn't come out and say, yes, of course I'd believe just based on John. And same with Paul. I asked him if all you had Paul's letters. He said, I don't know, but he didn't say, yes, I would believe just based on Paul. And so somewhere in between John and Paul, the latest gospel and the earliest records, his belief switch turns on somewhere. And I was trying to find out where, and it seems like martyrdom might have been where it turns on.
yeah. Yeah, and there are people like, I think Jonathan McClatchy and also J. Warner Wallace are people who came to Christianity not because of personal experience, but instead because of instead because of their investigation. Same with Lee Strobel. It wasn't because of personal experience, it was the investigation.
Yeah, but I don't believe that for 1 second.
That's
You know
interesting.
why?
Because I will say, and just to really quick, yes, I will agree. Okay, I had to have the personal experience first and then the Gospel of John. So I guess I can say that if it were just the Gospel of John only and no personal experience, that would be a whole different scene.
And I think that's what Doug's asking in his question. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking. But you mentioned J. Warner Wallace and Lee Strobel. I don't believe in those two cases either, because if you listen to their testimony, they'll talk about their wives. And for J. Warner Wallace, it was basically they just had kids and they're just starting a family. His wife became a Christian, and then he did. I can totally understand that. Like, you're trying to set up a stable family unit, and I think he desired it for both himself and his wife. With Lee Strobel, same thing. His wife became a Christian first. His what does he say that?
That's true. That's true.
His wife's friend became a Christian and then saved his daughter's life with the Heimlich maneuver or something. And so now this woman admires this other woman for saving her daughter's life, becomes a Christian. And Lee Strobel's life was a mess. Like, he was a drunkard. He needed a change, and Christianity gave him that change. So I think Lee Strobel and J. Warner Wallace are just like you, SJ. There was some type of personal experience, and then that, I think, in my view, clouds their lens on how to view the evidence. Now, you would say it makes it more clear, but I'd say it clouds it.
I would say it makes it more clear. That's so true. It just, I mean, I spent a lot of years just waffling about, and so I can attest to that, the waffle. I definitely, I was more like, I was never agnostic. I always felt like there is a presence, there is a spiritual dimension, and God is out there. I just didn't know what his form was. So,
yeah, and that's what I said at my closing. I said, keep God if you want. Like, keep that view of creator God that's maybe he's even looking out for you, but the evidence is not sufficient to say a man rose 2,000 years ago. Even if God exists, it doesn't get you any closer to him wanting to raise this guy who claims to be God from the dead.
Yes. Now I've been looking at, I'll tell you, and I know that the thing is, as far as the guy 2,000 years ago, I think there's plenty of evidence that we have. And it's interesting because what you're saying kind of aligns with what Jesus predicted when he talked about the rich man and Lazarus, because he said, even if somebody appears to you, you're still not going to believe. So even if you're given the evidence, you're still compelled by your own desires not to believe.
But then John contradicts Luke and says that many hard-hearted Jews did believe because Jesus rose a different Lazarus from the dead. You know,
Yeah, he
that in the
did.
Gospel of John?
So that's not the same Lazarus.
I know.
Lazarus was a pretty common name.
But some critical New Testament historians will say that the Lazarus in John is mirroring the Lazarus in Luke to tell an opposite story. That yes, the miracles did, number one, show that Jesus was God, so they're important. And number two, that people actually change their minds when they see these miracles. That's what the gospel author of John is saying. Whereas Luke is saying, no, we got the scriptures.
Some won't.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I don't see them as contradictory because some will not. So you have definitely some people who even saw Jesus after he rose and they still went away, or even saw him perform all kinds of miracles and they still walked away. And so you definitely still have that contingent.
Okay. Well, I'm the type of guy that I would side with the author of John, not Luke, and say, hey, show me the money.
Or you have the doubting Thomas. And so
yeah,
all
exactly.
the apostles, hey, we saw this. We saw Jesus come back, and he's like, he missed the party. He's like, hey, I'm not going to believe it unless I can put my finger in it.
But the thing is, I really think you and I are the same, SJ. I think if I make a claim that's on par to Jesus's claims, you would be very skeptical on.
I mean, I've just done 3 videos on the Shroud of Turin, which I was always skeptical on. I did not believe that the Shroud of Turin was even possible because of the carbon dating from the mid-'80s. And I thought, well, I'll be fair. I'm going to be open-minded, and I'm going to look at all of the evidence that's out there and all the academic writings since then on the Shroud of Turin. So I started digging through a bunch of academic journal articles. And I have to say, it's the case for the Shroud of Turin is much stronger than I thought before.
Yeah, for me, I trust the carbon dating, and so to me, it's a no-brainer. But even if you were to say it's from the 1st century, how do you know it's Jesus's and not someone else's who was crucified in the 1st century?
Well, how'd you get that kind of radiation, Doug? Other than a resurrection?
Well, the radiation is that's part of it. You don't have. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that's
what
really,
they say.
really,
there's. When Jesus rose from the dead, he gave
that's
off extra.
That's supposed to be what the image is supposed to be. Some
they
kind
have
of
no idea
radiation.
what form that image. They can't figure it out. And so some authors, some academics these days are positing that it was radiation.
And the joke I was making, like the butt of the joke was, why would you think that radiation has anything to do with resurrection miracles?
They think it was radiated light.
But why would there be light? If it's just Jesus in there, and if Jesus isn't reincarnated, if he isn't incarnated again, right? He's not there to see the light, and no one else is around to see the light of him. So who's the light for? Or is the light necessary for God to perform? Is there some mechanism that God's constrained by that has to have? There's just no flesh on the bones as far as an.
Well, what do they say? The dark spots on the cloth. What do they say it is?
They said they can't figure it out. People initially thought it was some sort of paint or pigment, but they've ruled that out. And so,
what if it's just a discoloration of the cloth itself? Like someone took a small stick, put fire on the end of it, and just artists do that today with fire.
They've taken a look at. I mean, we shouldn't. This is totally going away from the thing, but I definitely think that if you look at the case and you look at what they found, where they took the little piece from the cloth, they took this little piece on a mended area that had been mended. They estimate probably around the 1500 fire that occurred, 1534, I think it was. And so there's a lot of really interesting evidence, and I have to say it's really interesting to look into with an open mind.
I think the Shroud of Turin was made on purpose
in the Renaissance.
to give some actual hard evidence for Jesus, because some Christians admitted we don't have hard evidence at all.
Well, there was a whole Catholic industry of relics to do with Jesus' life and ministry. So, one of the jokes Martin Luther made actually at the Reformation was that 18 of the 12 apostles are buried in Spain. And that
18 of the 12?
Yeah, that's the joke, because there's so many of these relics and stuff going around, that are obviously fake, and people who are powerful would collect, fragments of the cross, or a piece of Mary's dress, dress. And I think the best explanation of the shroud is that it's just another one of these fake relics that someone made, probably by digging up a dead body, wrapping it in the
You'd think it
cloth.
would be, except for that the reason that there's so much interesting information about it. Like, we didn't even really see the image very clearly until a person in 1898 took a photo of it. And suddenly we saw the reverse negative image from a film that gave us much more clarity on even the little coins that had been put over his eyes. You could actually see the carvings and the words that were in there, which went back to the 1st century.
Yeah, but someone could easily fake that.
You can say that. How would somebody in the medieval times
What's interesting
know, for
this
example,
about-
that he was pierced right here? There's all this stuff that is really
But if
interesting.
someone
I mean,
wanted to fake it, they would know all that stuff, right?
But how would they
Before-
have put the image on the cloth?
I think with fire.
Yeah, well, they've actually ruled out fire too. So
How did they rule out fire?
because it would have burned through the cloth just like it did in
No,
the 1500s.
I can take a piece of paper right now and take a lighter, and I can make a picture without burning the actual paper.
So if you want to do it, Doug, I would love to see your experiment on you getting a cloth, a linen
Yeah,
cloth.
I got a lighter right
flax
here.
linen. No, get a flax linen cloth. Flax linen.
Cloth would be easier than a
Because
paper.
that's what it's got to be. So a flax linen cloth, and show me how you can burn an
How am I
image
going
that
to
looks
find a
like
flax linen
a
cloth
human.
so quickly?
And then also make sure that you put in some bilirubin from the blood on there, because people in the medieval times really were aware that there was bilirubin in the blood of a person who was beaten, and that would give the image, and the blood that has lacerations all over the body, including one that was just under the heart where Jesus had been pierced by the sword. Anyway, that's another experiment.
I think we'd have to get into the details a bit more. So
yeah, let's not get into that. So let's go back to Doug. What part of the review do you think we should listen to? Would you prefer we listen to your opening, or should we move on and listen to?
Let's listen to the opening, because I haven't listened to it yet.
Okay.
So this is fresh. This is like,
Okay, so
my reaction to myself.
We will go back to there. Okay, so let me just bring this screen back. Hold on. Share system audio. Okay, so Doug's opening. So we just listened to a couple seconds of it, but we'll keep going here.
Now let's go to the earliest evidence. Let's say all we had was Paul's letters and none of the Gospels, none of the epistles, just Paul's stuff. Really think about this. Would you believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead if that's all you had? My guess is we're the same. My guess is that Trent would say no, and I would say no, and all the Catholic viewers right now would say no. So what's really interesting is if we're the same with the latest stuff and we're the same with the earliest stuff, there's something in between where the belief switch goes on. And maybe it has to do with personal experiences. And maybe the reason why I don't believe the resurrection of Jesus is because I don't have the Holy Spirit in me.
Speak for yourself.
To believe it. I cannot.
So I think, Doug, I think you're onto something there. So.
Yeah, I said that purposely because I'm trying to get Catholics to agree with me. Like, they're going to say, yeah, this atheist guy's right. And if they can say that I'm right about one thing, they're more likely to listen to me about other things. Very sneaky of me, right?
Why do you want, I'm curious on why at the end, one of the things that I did find really interesting, and you just repeated it and reminded me that you said this, but at the very end, when you said something like, you can go ahead and believe in God. And I think that you look at the evidence of humans on this planet and you say, there seems like there's evidence of some sort of a creator, but I can't let you believe in Jesus Christ. Why is that?
No. I honestly think there is no, just because I do say that it's a miracle that we're here, but I define miracle as just like very low probability event. So in that sense, it's a miracle that we're here, but I do not believe that it's more likely a creator God exists than not. But I do think that once someone can see that the evidence for Jesus is not great, in fact, bad.
See, that's where we totally disagree.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's a natural progression that most people will become atheists. Once their specific religion, once they leave it, like you look at Mormons, when they leave Mormonism, the vast majority of them become atheists. They don't become Christians or Muslims. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe what it's like, SJ, is how you were kind of agreeing to personal experience playing this big role for people in becoming Christians, and I think that Doug's basically saying a lot of that personal experience is probably influenced by the kind of people you're hanging around, going to church services, singing, like those sorts of things. And so once you take that specific religion out of it and you take those kind of stimuli away, well, then there's just not really much motivation to kind of hold to like this random philosophical belief that doesn't do much for you. And so eventually you peter out.
Yeah, and once you realize your own religion is wrong, you can very quickly see the same patterns in other religions.
Yeah, if you see, the thing was, as I was raised a Catholic, going to Catholic church, Catholic grade school, all that kind of stuff, and then I spent many years doubting. Now, I never doubted God's presence. I did doubt Jesus resurrected, though. I was very unsure of that, and I hadn't looked at any evidence. I just stupidly was just reading all kinds of books by people like Deepak Chopra. It was like ridiculous.
Oh my!
But oh yeah, it was bad.
Inspiring Philosophy has a book.
Wait, Johnson Pike says, "Hey SJ, what's your opinion of Saint Athanasius's view that James was the stepbrother of Christ?" Yeah, I believe that James
stepbrother.
There were three James. So there was James, the son of Alphaeus, James, the brother of John and son of Zebedee, and then there was James, who was leading the Jerusalem church. And yeah, he's the stepbrother of Christ. I totally believe that. So thank you for that super chat.
So they shared the same mother?
They shared the same mother, yeah.
So
yeah,
Mary
Catholics
slept
don't
around?
believe that. No, Catholics don't believe. No, the father for James would be Joseph, and the father for Jesus was our
Older
father.
or younger than
Oh,
Jesus?
that's what it means by stepfather. Okay.
Stepbrother, yeah.
Or
So
stepbrother.
he had other brothers and he had sisters according to the Gospels, but a lot of Catholics don't believe that, because we were raised to believe that Mary was a perpetual virgin. She never was not a virgin, but it says very specifically that all kinds of references to didn't consummate the marriage until after Jesus was born. That's right in the Gospels.
So you're saying he's a younger brother, right, of Jesus?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, Jude, James. So that's Catholics and Protestants. And that's actually something, I don't know, Doug, what you were raised in, or Nathan, what you've followed, but Catholics and Protestants have a lot of very specific differences about Mary. And so.
Yeah. I still don't understand why Catholics worship Mary, like not as much as Jesus, but why they give her any esteem.
she's
at
the
all.
mother of God.
So what? She's like, that's like saying, the glass you put wine in is special. Well, really, it's the
it is.
wine.
Of course, Doug. I've got my special coffee mug. Do you not have a special coffee mug?
She was just a vessel that God used. Like
Special pair of socks for lucky sports matches.
The Catholics, I mean, I have to say, it's the rosary itself. If you look at a rosary, and I wonder if I have one up here. No, it's not, it's downstairs. If you look at a rosary, you say something like 9 Hail Marys to every one Our Father. And I think that's sort of inverted on what it should be.
Don't you view that as superstitious though, SJ? Because you're not fully Catholic.
Mm-mm.
I don't know if you're fully Protestant, but like, isn't that just nuts to you?
The rosary itself?
Yeah, and that people, like, it's almost like a incantation. Like they chant these things. How is that different than some tribe in Africa chanting to their God? It seems so bizarre to me.
Yeah. Well, it's some of the chant. I mean, there's certain things. Susan corrected me. It says 10 Hail Marys for every Our Father. I need to go count those things on my rosary. But yeah, there's different things. Like if you go into a church, which I've never been into one of these kind of churches, the Pentecostal churches, where people believe they're speaking in tongues.
Yeah, that's true. They're nuts too.
And so I saw, was it on your channel where you had a woman who was an atheist who was
on my channel? It was
it your channel?
Yeah.
And then
I
started
had it on my
speaking.
channel 2 years ago. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
She started speaking like this really weird language, or
It was Amy. I think you were there, Doug, right?
That's right. It was Amy.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
who it was. So yeah, that's okay. So let's go back to Doug's thing here. So I see we got some pretty good people in the
Very
chat.
flattering pause of Doug there.
What's your record live stream viewers, SJ? Not see.
That's a good question. I think it was when I had Scott Clifton on. So I'm trying to
was it?
remember. I think it was in the 40s. So you might be breaking a record. I think it's you two. You guys
I
are
haven't
breaking
even shared it yet. You want me to get you up to 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
They can put it on. I'll put it on Twitter as well. Let's see what we can do.
So,
Because you're competing with Braxton Hunter at Trinity Radio tonight. So
oh no, am I really? Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, he's on right now?
yeah, they stream at this
Hey,
time every
SJ,
time.
I got a great idea. Let's review this, but then when Braxton's done, you should say, hey, Braxton, can you come on in to my channel for a bit? I'm live. Don't tell him I'm here.
when he comes here. And
Or that I'm
So-
Okay, I just tweeted it out and I'll share it on Facebook. And yeah, go ahead.
oh, that's so funny. Okay, here we go.
See the truth unless the Holy Spirit's in me first and has regenerated me first, and then I can see the truth. But I don't think Trent's that type of person, so we'll move on. So what I want to do different here is I want to talk about how Christians think about the resurrection and how many Christians do not believe in the resurrection of Jesus for the reasons that Trent outlined here today. And I bet you anything, I'm guessing here, but I bet there's a lot of Catholics listening who believe the resurrection of Jesus because of some personal experience they had, probably while partaking in the Eucharist. And you know what? I respect that more than what Trent said, because at least that's something today. Now, I think there's a ton of defeaters for that, but at least it's some type of evidence that today we can say, yes, this is why I believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and it's not based on text from 2,000 years ago. Can you pause it?
Yeah.
So all my cards on the table. I said that for a specific reason, because there's going to be Catholics listening who are going to say, I agree with what that atheist just said. He's right. I believe, and you agree too, maybe not because of the Eucharist, but they're going to resonate with what I just said and more likely to listen to what I have to say on later things.
It's interesting. I can say now I don't have when I've had spiritual experiences, or what I would call spiritual experiences, and I will agree that sometimes those do occur in a church, but the Catholic Church is so much different in the delivery than the Baptist church where I attend. It's so different. It's like night and day. And so when I go back to a Catholic church, which I do when my sister's around, because my sister's practicing Catholic, it feels really weird to me, even though I grew up with that, because the Baptist delivery is just contemporary music. It's much more jovial. And that, when I have the spiritual experiences, it hasn't been in the Catholic Church. It was actually in the Baptist church. Which is kind of weird.
I
Probably
think you're
to
muted,
you.
Doug.
Oh, I said that was interesting because they're so cold and dry, those Baptists, right?
No, well, they're different. I mean, I have to say there's certain things I like about the Catholic Church. Like I like that there's one unified voice. The Baptist churches are very decentralized, and there really isn't a unified voice. And there are some people who kind of are holy rollers on the Baptist side that you wouldn't find on a Catholic side. Like I see priests sitting in restaurants drinking wine frequently. It's like you wouldn't see the Baptist preacher doing that.
No. Yeah, they're more anal.
So they're just, well, they're different. They're
Well, maybe not.
It depends if they have a pool boy or not. Yeah, that's
oh jeez. Well, I have to say that's one of the reasons I left the Catholic Church, is because I was very disturbed with the way that nobody was dealing with what was going on in the church.
Oh, I meant that weren't there a few like evangelical and Baptist types who were involved in things with pool boys and things over the past couple of years?
You see, you know, you have bad apples in every group. You have to admit. I mean, there's just bad people out there, and the Catholic. I mean, here's another thing that two Catholic priests did just recently in Delray Beach, Florida. So I have friends that go to the St. Vincent's Church in Delray Beach. And then I come to find out, it might have been about 10 years ago, but these two priests took all the money that had been donated to the church, took a bunch of it, and took their girlfriends, which you're not supposed to have girlfriends, took their girlfriends to Las Vegas and blew it all. It's just ridiculous. And so that's the kind of thing that can really turn you off. You listen to that stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, why are they doing this? But then you hear somebody like Trent or Brent Petrie. Or have you guys ever heard of Brent Petrie?
No,
I don't think so.
He'd be a good one to get on your channel. He's very good.
he's
good.
a Catholic.
Yeah, very good speaker. Brent Pitre. He's written a bunch of books. If I were going to go to a Catholic church, I'd go. And if he's preaching there, he's not a preacher, but he goes sometimes and he does do sermon sorts of things in churches, and he's really good. So should we go back, Doug?
Yeah, keep going.
I think you have more viewers than Trinity Radio right now, SJ.
That is
amazing.
amazing.
yeah,
It's-
let's
you
beat
two
them.
are just celebrities here. Oh, are SE tactics wrong? Perk is asking. So, oh wait, hold on one second before I go
I
back.
just asked Greg Kokel that question yesterday, and he said no.
I don't think SE tactics are wrong. I think that, well, let me first say, okay, Johnson Pike, very hefty super chat. A lot of Catholic churches have sort of hokey music, at least compared to the Orthodox liturgy, in my opinion. But then again, I haven't been to a TLM or the more regional rites. Okay, so TLM, I'm not, do you guys know
A
what
traditional
TLM?
Latin mass, I think.
Oh, okay.
Oh, look at Nathan go.
Good, Nathan.
I didn't know what TLM stood for either.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So there is that. Well, that's the other thing. There's like the difference in Catholic. It's like hymns versus contemporary music over in the Baptist church. And I like the contemporary stuff. My sister likes the hymns.
Bit of Hillsong. Is that?
I like the hymns.
Yeah,
Are you a
she likes
Hillsong
the
person,
hymns.
SJ?
I like Hillsong. Yeah. Hillsong
Oh, no,
United.
the Hillsong heresy. That's what we used to call it.
Oh, no, there's a group
Yeah,
called Hillsong United.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that-
what. Yeah.
Oh, that's what you
the
call it?
joke was the Hillsong heresy, but yeah, like the.
Yeah, they're really good.
I liked a
Right
few
up-
of their. I used to listen to a few of their songs and quite like them, but they're very emotional. Let's put it that way. They work a
I'm
lot
trying
of.
to remember. What was it? So you just said you were talking to who did you say, Greg Kukel yesterday? Was he on your channel?
No, he was on Canadian Catholic's channel, and so I interviewed him for about 40 minutes.
Huh. That's interesting
Go
because
check it out.
he's
was
got a
fun.
really good book. Did he put any stones in your shoe? Because that's what he likes to do.
I think it was the other way around.
Yeah, he cried at the end and gave his life to Satan, but I don't know if it'll stick. No, I pushed him very hard, and I know the soft spots because he's a Calvinist.
Oh, he's Calvinist. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so I pushed him on that, and yeah, he was. In my opinion, he was like a fish on the dock floundering.
I'll have to listen to that. So I'm not a Calvinist, by the way. I don't know
Yeah, I know.
if that makes sense. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense to, I think some of the stuff Calvinists believe just sort of locks God into linear time. And I think that's why I'm not a Calvinist, but I'll say hi to everybody in the chat. So let's go back to what Doug is saying here in this debate.
But I want to read something from Matt Chandler, who's a pastor, Christian pastor. And Catholics, I think we're agreed that the claim of Jesus Christ rise from the dead is weird. It's abnormal, right? We're agreed with this.
See, I can say, yes, we are agreed that it's not normal. But it's just something that God would be capable of doing. So, but I think your point here is you want to
maybe
go ahead.
Well, maybe here's the problem, SJ, right? So you can say, yeah, like you can agree God would be capable of doing that, but wouldn't you also say, God would be capable of creating a perfectly round marble 2,000 years ago as well if he wanted to?
Sure.
And he would be capable of creating the Eiffel Tower, but at the bottom of the deepest part of the ocean 2,000 years ago if he wanted to, right?
He could do whatever he wants. Absolutely.
And this is the problem, right? Because there's absolutely no constraints on any of the possible things God could do. So when you're saying, so that's all the possible things that God could have done, and you're saying, well, it's one of those ways. So just believing that God has the power to do this one thing, right? The probability, though, the prior probability that he would do any one of them is really low because it's one over all of literally anything that God can do.
But the
and that's
purpose
a really
of
low price.
the purpose of why I said what I said here is to help the Christian or Catholic understand that, is it really so weird that we don't believe this? Like these are very big, weird claims, and I think and I think you would admit this, SJ, right? Like the claim of a man being dead for several days and then coming back to life is a huge claim, and it's really bizarre. And some would say it's nuts. Same with walking on water and all the other miracles. And so I think the Christian should actually have some empathy for the non-believer and saying, we understand these are nutso claims, but we have sufficient evidence to believe it. That's what the Christian should say, but at least admit that this is nuts.
Well, I mean, as I said before, even Paul admits that some people who are non-believers are going to think some of our beliefs are crazy. So even Paul said that
Yeah,
in
the
one of
gospel's
the.
foolishness to those who are perishing.
So yeah, so you have that kind of thing. But I can see I can see that argument. I can say something that C.S. Lewis said that I think I found really an interesting thought to put into your mind is the types of miracles that Jesus did. They weren't miracles to scare people. They were miracles of love. Like, for example, turning the water into wine. It was pretty cool. Walking on water. They were miracles to show who he was. Like the walking on water alludes to Job, because in the book of Job, it said nobody but God can walk on water. So that's why they're like, oh my gosh, who is this? And then curing the blind, healing people. Those are miracles of love. And it's
I
not
think
like,
in this case, like my opinion is that there might be a bit of what's called hindsight bias going in here, where you sort of already know that those sorts of claims are what are attributed to Jesus. And so you retroactively kind of go, yeah, if I found out someone did that, I would think that they're like God. Whereas I think if you'd never been exposed to Christianity or any of the claims about Jesus's life and ministry, you'd be like, so some guy turned like water into wine? Like, I mean, is that a loving thing to do? It's not exactly clear. I mean, what if someone wanted water and now there's only wine, right? Like, maybe they've got enough wine for the party, but now they've not got any water. There's sort of all sorts of questions that are raised by what we should conclude from these miracles. And obviously some explanations are going to be better than others as to what they might potentially show. But yeah, I'm not sure that these miracles particularly align with some kind of pre-theoretic conception of like a good being or something.
well, I think it goes back because it harkens back. That's why when John the Baptist was talking and he was in the prison that Herod had imprisoned him because he had called Herod out for going after his brother's wife. And so John the Baptist is sitting in prison and he said, go ask Jesus, is he the one? John wanted to know, was he the one who was referenced in Isaiah, who was in the wilderness, a voice in the wilderness? And Jesus said, let John know that I've been healing the blind. I've been doing all this stuff because it's a direct reference back to Isaiah so that John could confirm to himself that, yes, this is the one whose feet you are unworthy to tie, whose shoes or whatever. So I mean, there's just, it's fascinating because you think about the miracles that he could have done. I mean, he could have stood there and just literally moved a mountain. He could have done something that would have scared people. He could have had thunder come flying from the sky in really crazy ways, or just done something like that would just shock and scare people. But instead he did these very generous personal miracles.
A herd of pigs going towards a cliff is kind of scary if you're in the way.
Yeah, the pigs. That's where the demons were.
And telling Peter to walk on water with him, that's a little scary.
It showed Peter's faith. That's actually really interesting too. So what do you make of the fact that Peter was kind of doubting and Paul,
Lazarus think a thing?
What do you think about that? How do you guys think towards that when you've got people who are doubting him? James tried to stop his ministry. James, Jesus' half brother, and then you've got
my view
Peter
is
and
that
Paul. What do you make of that?
My view is that these things are narrative devices that have been put in, deliberately because people are having doubts, and they kind of like tell people with those doubts who are reading the text how to respond to those.
So you don't believe that Paul actually had the experience that he said he had, or you don't believe that you think somebody inserted that into the book of Acts?
I think there's a historical person called Paul who had an experience, but in terms of then how he's processing that after the fact in the context of having persecuted Christians, learn about their theology, maybe feeling guilt about some of those things, and then becoming a Christian himself, I think he would use narrative devices the same way people who make sightings of UFOs or Elvis. If you listen to any of their testimonies, they'll say things like, "Look, I was a hardcore skeptic, but even I was convinced by this." There's certain narrative devices that people use to persuade people, and I think that those are present in the Gospels as well.
Yeah, see, I know that a lot of people like to kind of say that the gospel, if you guys put yourself as believers of Jesus who honestly believe that you're writing about God and that's how these people were believing, you're not going to go take a bunch of literary, you're not going to throw a bunch of literary fake phony devices in there to try to be convincing. That's not what you do.
Well, I don't think they're thinking, from my point of view, they're not thinking what I'm going to do right now is tell people a lie. From my point of view, what I think they're doing is just putting together a story in a way they think is perfectly legitimate to persuade people. I don't think the people who make UFO sightings and stuff, I don't think that they think I'm going to lie to people to make my story more convincing. I just think it's what people do when they sort of think maybe the ends justify the means, or this is something really important I want to persuade people of.
It's interesting. You and I differ on some of these things, but I think that it's interesting how the approach that you take to move away from some of the evidence that's there.
Well, like the thing is, Jesus's very first major act in Mark, not a miracle, but his transition from being a guy to being filled with the Holy Spirit at the baptism. Like, I do think there could be two things going on there, and it not ever happening in the past. And that is, number one, it's to signal to the Jews that Jesus is the new Elisha. And just like Elijah kind of gave his ministry, passed it on to Elisha at the Jordan River, guess what? John and Jesus, Jordan River. And I think in the Gospel of Mark, it even says that John the Baptist had like a hairy coat. You remember that?
Yeah. I don't remember what he was dressed in, but I do remember.
Yeah. And why would an author talk about what John the Baptist? Maybe it's not in Mark, but somewhere in the Gospels it says that John the Baptist had a hairy coat.
Yeah, I don't remember that for some
Why
reason.
would that
I remember
come in?
He was eating grasshoppers and wild honey. I do remember that.
Yeah. But some would say that the reason why the author mentioned that is because he's trying to show that John is like Elijah, because Elijah's said in the Old Testament to be a very hairy man.
That's interesting. Well, there's certainly a lot of comparisons. What's interesting is we didn't have Moses's body when Moses died, and we also Elijah was swept up into the sky, and so the two people who appeared with Jesus at the Transfiguration were Moses and Elijah, which I think is fascinating because of the way that we don't have the details on their particular where their bodies went. So.
Yeah, but again, if you are not a believer, you can very easily say that this is the author trying to elevate Jesus to their status and higher. Right. And so if you're a Jew and you go, wait, this guy is as good as Moses and Elijah, and maybe even better. So you can actually see purpose to why the authors wrote what they did, and none of it happening in history.
Let me just hold on one second. Okay, my husband's sending me watch messages because I left my phone downstairs. So I just, So sorry, I just got thrown off there a little bit. He's saying I've got to go to Spectrum with him. So yes.
What time's that?
I have my watch on. He knows I don't know. He wants to go pretty quickly because his brother and sister. You
go ahead. Nathan and I will take over.
Yeah. Wait. Let me just. I have my watch on. Hold on.
Tell your husband we got more important things to do.
I know this is a very important conversation.
The Lord's work. Wait.
Tell your husband that you're at 77 viewers and you're trying to break a record, and he's trying to block your goals.
He wants to get
a woman.
Two TV boxes because two of our TV boxes broke, and so he wants to make sure it's all set up for when his brother gets here tomorrow. So it's so funny. So I will stop that in a little bit. But Canadian Catholic says, he has a super chat. Thank you, Canadian Catholic. He says, Doug, are you upset that Bart Ehrman debunked you? I'm not familiar with what that is.
I am. If anyone hasn't watched the video, I can inform. Have you seen it, Doug?
He's just trying to get people to watch his channel, right?
Yeah, but he made a clip of when he was on your channel the other week. He asked you if I forget who exactly. Maybe it was Peter and Paul, but I can't remember. If they believe that Jesus resurrected, and you said, "Well, what are you asking me here? Are you asking me did they form the belief he resurrected, or did they see his resurrected body? Because those are two different questions."
Yeah.
And then he asked Bart Ehrman a different question. He said, did they believe that Jesus resurrected? And Bart goes, yeah, of course they believed he resurrected. And then it's like, yeah, Doug destroyed, but it's just a different question.
Yeah, but if you were to ask Bart Ehrman,
did they believe he was bodily resurrected? Yeah, he'd answer the same.
Does Peter ever say that he himself saw the bodily resurrected Jesus? Bart Ehrman say no.
Right.
And that's what I was getting at. But if he wants to make videos to show that I'm wrong,
It had funny music though. To be fair to him, and yeah, it was some interesting editing. So
That's fine. I expect that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm trying to go back and forth here. So let's go back. Let's listen to a little bit more of your clip, okay? Sorry, I'm distracted. I've got to run down there a little bit, but I just realized my name's on the account, on the Spectrum account. So that's why I have to go. So, but not yet. I can go in just a few minutes. So here we go.
okay.
This is not controversial. And this is what this Pastor Matt Chandler says. There's a foolishness to what we believe. It's crazy. If anybody ever says it back to you, you have to know the Holy Spirit has done a work in your life. So let me get this straight. A virgin gave birth to a guy who was God, but only part of God, but still completely God. The man also lived perfectly, so they killed him, they buried him, and then he came back to life and he floated back into heaven. And then one day, and I want to make sure I get all this straight, one day he's coming back on a white horse to get us. That's what you believe, partner? And what's the Christian response? Yeah, I do. You want to come with us? You want to go meet him in the air with us? This is a quote from Christian Matt Chandler. So we're not just talking about any normal claim. Your beliefs are crazy.
Okay. Discuss.
I love that.
Do you agree, SJ? Yeah.
Discuss. No, I don't believe our beliefs are crazy. I want to ask you guys if maybe I've asked this to you before, but if suddenly it was confirmed without a doubt that Jesus is the Son of Man and sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming in the clouds of heaven, all that kind of stuff's completely confirmed to you. It's the end times. You see him in the sky coming back, all this stuff. What would you do? Would you still prefer to walk away, or would you decide that this is God, but I'm not going to worship him? Or would you decide that this is God and I am going to worship him?
Well, first of all, I would still say it's crazy. Like that should be, all this is nuts. Okay. Based on how you live your life. Like when you go to the grocery store, SJ, you don't see stuff like this happening all around you. This is bizarre. This is crazy. But your question is, would I follow it? It depends on what type of Christianity it means. Like if I became convinced that Jesus was God, died for my sins, and rose again.
You might want to ban someone in the chat there, SJ, by the way.
Who is that? Wait, you can't do that.
Yeah,
who's doing
claiming
that?
to be Doug, but yeah.
Yeah.
You can put user in timeout, block user. I can't do that. You guys can't, don't, we're not doxing people. That's not right. I blocked him. So.
Where was I? Yeah, I would believe it. And so now the question is, would I follow it? And I've always said that I don't want to live in heaven forever. So I would do or say whatever I would need to do to not live forever. I want to be annihilated.
Well, why? What is your perception of heaven? Do you think we're sitting around with harps in our hands, floating on clouds, or what do you think heaven's going to be like?
Well, according to the text, heaven has no suffering. And I love poker, and in order to love poker, you got to make other people suffer. So no poker.
Who is this person? Hold on, I'm sorry. I've got to.
Yeah, there's some people who really hate me.
You guys, if you're one of my mods, and I just made Nathan. Nathan, I thought I had you as a mod. I don't know how that, but
you did. You removed me, SJ. You.
I made you
cast
back
me into the outer darkness.
No, I put you back in.
Yeah.
But you guys can block whoever, if somebody comes in here and puts in somebody's address, doxing them. You can't do that here. So that's just not right. It says an error occurred. Well, I'm trying to block.
I removed them already. So.
Okay.
So does that make sense? So, if ECT is real, then I'll do whatever it takes to not go there.
Eternal conscious torment, ECT.
Yeah.
I mean, I think heaven wouldn't be heaven if you were forced to be there. So I think the fact that you have a choice is pretty good. Would you agree?
Yeah, but then
fair?
But then I'm in a conundrum because if I don't want to go to eternal conscious torment and I don't want to live forever, I'm out of options if those are the only two options, right?
Yeah, there's not too many options.
It's not even clear what you mean by Doug's options here, right? Because suppose you as a Christian saw that happening, right? And Jesus is coming down on the clouds. Like, what would you do? I mean, do you just get down on the ground and start like praying? Do you go to the grocery store? Do you get a gun? Like, it's not really clear what you do and how that translates to any decision that God is going to make about where you go in the afterlife. And that's, I think, going to be the same for the atheist as well when they imagine themselves in that position. It's like, well, what do you do? It's not clear what you do. Just maybe it's more like what's God going to do at that point? Yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing because I personally don't think it'd be a very good time to be in the end times. Like, I don't want to be, I don't want to be here in that last 3.5 years. I hope that I'm not around, my kids aren't around, their kids aren't around. I just hope that, because I don't think that that's going to be terribly unpleasant from everything I've read in Revelation. So,
but any deity, like from my point of view, any deity that requires worship or even to bow down, to me is foreign. Like, I've gave this analogy before. It'd be like me demanding, when I take my dog for a walk, me demanding an ant on the sidewalk to worship me. Like, I'm so much greater than that ant. It's not even going to occur to me to ask for worship. And if there is a all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good deity, he cares about people bowing down to him? Like, explain this to me.
So I think that that's the whole idea of your view of worship, and how worship is something that's antithetical to what you consider a human option, is what you consider something that's good to do. In my view, I think everybody worships a God. It just depends on who that God is. And many people, they're their own little gods. Like J. Warner Wallace said when he was an atheist for many, many years, he said, I worshiped God. Sure, I was the God. And so, everybody, it could be the God is my dad is 80 years old. He's driving around now in a brand new red Corvette. It's like, I think that suddenly that is the focal point of his attention right now, that red Corvette. And so, material things sometimes are people's gods in some way. And so it's really just a matter of what it is. And I think that the correct version of who God is love. And so if you realize you're worshiping love, then I think that all fits pretty well together.
Yeah, but what does that really mean to worship love? Like,
to love.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what does that mean? Like, what practically, like, let's put it in terms of other humans. Like, I would really admire and respect a human if, let's say, they did literally save my child's life. Okay, they were about to be hit by a car and they run in and they save my child's life. Now, I get the analogy that, well, that's what Jesus did on the cross. He saved your life. But from what? From eternal conscious torment, or you could say sin. But why is sin bad? Well, because you're insulting the creator of the universe. Okay, and that brings me back to my first point. Why does the creator of the universe care what ants do against him?
So, well, it's like, why would a father care when his son does something against him? And so it's
okay.
not. So
that's a good answer. So that always goes to, well, it's in your best interest, right? To do what your father says, your earthly father, because he has your best interest.
Decent father. So,
but the thing is, yeah, assuming you have a decent father, but the thing is, you don't really see any correlation between this concept of God, Yahweh, and people actually living healthier, better lives. Like, sure, you can say, yeah, well, I'm a Christian, I don't smoke and I don't drink, and therefore I'm more healthy. Yeah, but I can find you people from other religions who, like Muslims, don't smoke and drink, and
Hitler didn't smoke and drink.
Yeah, so there's no guarantee your life is going to be any better. In fact, there's some verses that imply your life will be worse if you become a Christian. So when you say it's for your well-being, it's for your own good to worship God and obey him because he knows what's best, basically we're talking about heaven and hell again.
Yeah, well, I think
that's gotta be
going
right.
back to your question of this idea of what did Jesus save us from? I think that's a good question, because the answer is, what condition was what condition was humankind in? For some reason, and I haven't completely figured this out yet, but for some reason we were bound to our sins and sort of bound on this earth. And there had somehow must have to do something with Satan or not. I don't know exactly how that worked, but somehow we were bound here and unable to break through and get into heaven. And then Jesus, the idea was he saved us from our sins, from this binding. and was able to open the door to heaven for us through his blood. And it's hard to understand that if you're a non-Christian and you're looking at Christian really skeptically and saying, why did it have to be blood? Why couldn't it be the blood of a lamb? Why did it have to be human blood? Why did it have to be blemish free? Why did God set it up that way, where there was the sacrifice of the Passover lamb? That's a big question. And it's something that I can't fully answer because I don't fully understand it. So, but that is a good question.
Do you think not being able to kind of find good justifications for those features of reality is actually evidence against theism being true? Like, if you could find those reasons and they were good reasons, presumably you'd think, yeah, this is like good evidence in favor of theism being true. But if you can't find those reasons, maybe because they don't exist, does that then become evidence against theism being true in your mind?
No, I think that it's evidence of my own fallibility, and so and my own inability to understand certain aspects of it. But I also realize that, but I do understand other aspects that to me are life changing. And I mean, I feel like you guys, if you the kind of inner peace and inner joy that you can have through beliefs in Jesus, it's really, I mean, it's like you've got a light inside of you. It's so amazing. And so I can't say I'm a perfect
I think that's
person.
all
I sin, I'm not
personality.
great, but I mean, it's just, I feel
Like,
like
I have
you guys
more peace.
don't know what you're missing.
I have more peace and contentment than I'd say the majority of Christians. I honestly believe that, because I'm not a worrier. I very rarely am anxious. Maybe like a couple times in my life have I actually said I'm anxious right now. And you'll find Christians true Christians that I think, SJ, you would say are true Christians, who are constantly full of anxieties and fear, and they worry about everything. Now, so what's going on here? Like, where's this Holy Spirit providing the peace and comfort and joy when it seems like I have more of it than they do?
I think, I think one of the things I was watching, now I'm following this girl on Twitter, and I don't know if you guys have caught her. I'm trying to remember what she goes by. Small but feisty, I think it is. And I think she's Jim Major's girlfriend. And I was reading
I think
her.
there's something around that is not good. I don't know.
Yeah,
Apparently,
well, I won't get
yeah.
into that because
Yeah.
but I did want to just say with her, I looked at what she was posting about her background and how she was in this really super fundamentalist group that apparently they told her, you've got to be this way, you've got to be like a wife, you're grooming to be a wife, and like completely sort of didn't let her act like she wanted to act. I mean, they were completely putting her down. And the same kind of experience I know you see in these pockets of America, for sure. You definitely see these fundamentalist pockets where you've got these people who are probably in many cases hypocritical. And so a lot of the people who are atheists now, a lot of them have come from those kind of environments, which I can understand, Doug. I can see if my parents had treated me like that growing up, I'd be a totally different person today. I can just say that.
Yeah, and that's the typical answer, right? Like if it's a distorted view of Christianity, and that's why there's problems. But anyhow, that guy in this live stream you're critiquing, it's really good. Let's listen to more.
All right, so here we go. I'm actually going to have to go in like 7 minutes, but we can come back. I'm sorry because I do have to go with the.
It's all right.
The spectrum.
Me and Doug we can keep talking though. SJ, you'd leave us talking. We'll.
I don't know how I could turn it off. How you guys would be able to get this to end though? That would be the only.
Oh yeah, I was assuming you'd come back in like half an hour.
We would be like Wreck-It Ralph and break the internet.
Yeah. No, I better stay on. You guys can go on your channel and then maybe I'll come back.
Yeah.
So here we go. Here's Doug.
And I respect Christians who own that. Now the question is that crazy belief true? So I talked about the earliest evidence, Paul. And if you agree with me that you wouldn't believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead just based on Paul, let's move on to the Gospels, because we need more, right? This is Mike Lacona from Insight 2020, October 2020. And this is on the topic of firsthand accounts. You can fast forward this, like maybe 2 minutes. This was probably a mistake I made because it's a long quote.
And he's not a Catholic.
Yeah, and he's not a Catholic. That's another mistake. I should have. And there was some other Catholics that I did know of and I didn't quote. But anyhow, but Michael Lacona is basically saying that you take what we have in the synoptic gospels and you put it in any other situation, and a police officer would say this is collusion. Mike Licona is admitting this, that the authors colluded at least partially in what you see in the gospels, because it's word for word translated decades later from one language to another. That is not a coincidence. That's the opposite of separating the witnesses and getting independent accounts. And Dale Allison has said the same thing. So there's no, I really think it's really hard pressed for any Christian to say that these are totally 100% independent accounts, because I know that's wrong. That's false. They're not.
So I could see, I don't really have a problem with them having worked together at some points, and some of the passages that Jesus said and probably repeated a lot. I mean, when people are doing sermons, they repeat their sermons quite a bit. And so you could have evidence of just them each remembering them in little different ways. They didn't have to record things word for word. But we do have some things that were word for word. I don't disagree with that. What I disagree with is Mike Licona, I've had him on my channel before, and I think he's a really nice guy. And I've also had Lydia McGrew on my channel a bunch of times. And Lydia's taken a lot of effort to write against sort of Mike's sometimes rather liberal views towards Christianity. And so
Mike's super conservative.
Yeah,
That's how you assess the spectrum differently depending on where you are on it, right?
Well, Mike even says things like he doesn't believe what happened in Matthew, when Matthew talks about the people rising up from the dead right after the resurrection, or right after the crucifixion, I'm sorry, right after Jesus died, that these spirits came out of and walked around Jerusalem, because apparently Matthew is the only account that we can find of that happening. And so Mike thinks it's a literary device that Matthew made up and put in there. And that's what Lydia really gets against.
But isn't that reasonable, though, what Mike Licona is saying?
I think that to think that the gospel authors were making things up to make their case more compelling, I think that's an insult. That would be insulting to God. That why can't you just record exactly what happened? That's what you're charged to do from God. You're not charged to create something that you think is more compelling of a case by inserting things that didn't happen. I don't think that would be something that God would permit.
But do you think God is in the
or
business
be happy
of?
with?
But do you think God's in the business of preventing humans from writing false things about him?
I think that God's for certain books. Yeah, I think that God was very much influential in the Bible. And so I think that in the Bible, what we find is truth about God. And I think the reason why a lot of the books were not included in the Bible that were written a lot later, like the Gnostics, is because that's where they were fabricating things. And the church fathers realized that.
Yeah, but yeah, I understand. So you're saying what's in the canon is special, and God doesn't. He would interfere with the free will of humans and say, "No, don't write that about me."
I think that, well, I mean, even in Paul says all the scripture is God breathed, and so I just don't think that there's going to be a bunch of insertions and literary devices. And hey, I've got to make this more compelling, so I'm going to pretend that James tried to stop his ministry, or I'm going to pretend that Jesus wasn't accused of being a drinker, something like that. And so I just think that they were charged with putting down the truth. And so,
Well, maybe Mike Licona would say that part in Matthew 27 is not scripture. So when it says all scripture is God breathed, yeah, that could be true, but the apocalyptic stuff is not scripture.
That's interesting. That's how you think Mike would say that? I should
Well,
have
that's
Mike
one
on my
out for
channel
Mike.
and really figure this out if that's what he thinks.
No, I that's one thing he could say. I don't know if he would say that, but because even it's not clear what is scripture, right? Like when Paul wrote all scriptures inspired or God breathed, the New Testament hadn't been written yet. So what's he referring to? He's referring to the Old Testament, right?
Yeah. Paul was.
So one could make the argument that there's no scripture that says the New Testament scripture.
Well, it's interesting because there is debate on exactly when Mark wrote his gospel. A lot of people think that Mark was the first, and you could make a pretty good case that a lot of it had to be written before the year 70. And I think you can make that case or had been written before Peter and Paul had been martyred, which occurred in the 60s. And so I think you could make a pretty strong case for that, based on, again, the lack of presence in the book of Acts, for example, of those two deaths.
Yeah, but the dating is irrelevant to whether it's scripture or not, right?
No, the dating, you're saying, because you're making a case that Paul was definitely written before any of the other Gospels were written.
Oh, well,
I'm saying that there's a possibility that the Gospels were written concurrently around the time Paul was writing.
okay. So you're saying that Paul's actually referring to some Gospels, all the Gospels, even John?
Well, no, not necessarily John. I think I could agree that John could have been written later.
Okay, so I can give you everything you just said and say the Gospel of John didn't exist when Paul wrote all Scripture, so he's definitely not referring to the Gospel of John, right?
So, well, he could have been referring to whatever had been written by that point. There is some people have estimated that some of the stuff that's said in Timothy, in First Timothy, is also repeated from the Gospels. There's a quote in there, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but so some people have said that was written either concurrently or around the same time as the Gospels of Luke. I believe it was Luke.
Okay. Well, if you want to
So,
fast forward the Michael Licona stuff, basically it's just about collusion.
okay, so I will go to one more quote, and then I'll have to go, unfortunately. But here we go. And you got me up to 99.
No, you're at 103 according to my stats.
Oh, really? Oh, 104.
104.
Dang, thank you so much. I have to have you on every week. And you and Nathan, you guys are a good pair. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, at least
And
6 of those are
leads
mine,
to
Astrid.
the synoptic.
Sorry, say it again. Oh, they're all
At
coming
least
from
6
Nathan,
of those
too.
are mine. Yeah.
As long as we beat Trinity Radio, that's all I care about.
How do you deal with the intertestamental texts that are referenced by Christ, like Sirach or the Enochian type literature reference to the third heavens by Paul? That's interesting. This stuff, a lot of Catholics actually believe there's a bigger Bible than the Protestants believe. Did you guys know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 7 more books or something.
Yeah, something like that. And so
And
I don't
even
know. I mean,
more
I
in,
haven't really.
like the Ethiopian Church and Eastern Orthodox and stuff. They've got even
Yeah.
more books.
Yeah, there. So I'm not sure. I don't know exactly. I haven't really gone through that very closely. I have to say, sorry about that, Johnson Pike. So, okay, here we go.
He's Eastern
wait, I
Orthodox,
wanted to zoom you
which
ahead
is
a little bit.
probably why he's asking, I suspect.
He's what?
Eastern Orthodox, so
Oh,
that's
he is,
probably
yeah.
why he's asking. Yeah.
Yeah, because I can say like Wisdom Sirach, I think is really amazing. Like I think that's a great book. The Book of Enoch. I mean, these are interesting books, but I'm not sure the Catholic Church went along with what early Jewish people did and eliminated those books, is my understanding. Or no, not the Catholic Church. I'm sorry, the Protestants went along with what some of the Jews eliminated from the Old Testament. That's my understanding, but the Catholics retain them. So I don't know. I don't know. Good question. All right, here comes Doug.
Speaking in Aramaic, it's been translated into Greek. It's almost word for word and reported at a minimum of 20 years later.
Okay, that's one to fight.
I'm quoting Licona here, right?
Oh, you are quoting Licona?
I'm quoting word for word Licona.
Oh boy. Okay, well I fight Licona.
So
then, I
basically,
won't-
everything in my opening, if someone says Doug's wrong here, you're saying a Christian's wrong here.
So yeah, and some
I was
Christians
very
are.
careful but I made the mistake, and I'll never make it again with a Catholic crowd to quote Protestants, because Protestants are not worth much.
You're like Mormons to Mormonism is to Protestantism as Protestantism is to Catholicism.
Yeah, I wonder how many
Yeah,
of Trent's followers actually even know who Mike Licona is.
Yeah, that's true. They might not. And that's the thing is it's interesting. When I've gone on Twitter and said things that were positive towards Catholics, I've noticed a lot of Protestants sort of beating up on me, like when I would say stuff like that on my other account. So the Protestants can be kind of.
I view you as like right
Catholics.
down the middle, SJ. I think you're 50% Catholic and 50% Protestant.
Yeah, I'd probably say so too. I didn't give up on my Catholicism.
Which is dangerous, because then it's hard for people to love you, because there's going to be half of
they only get half of me.
Yeah, exactly.
No, there's certain things I like about the Catholic. Like I love the big, huge church buildings. I think that those are fantastic. I used to think they were a big waste of money, but now I look back on it and I think I can see why people created those, to create that sense of awe when you go in there.
Yeah, I love those buildings too, and I think someday they're going to be great for paintball.
Oh, geez.
Well, in the UK, it's kind of the Church of England, in trying to raise money to kind of keep them going, has been doing a lot of weird stuff in them. So the Conservatives in the Church of England have been very upset about, like, why is there like a fairground inside a cathedral or whatever? It's supposed to be a place of worship.
That's a blasphemous thought, what I just said, right? Can you imagine hiding behind the front
Yeah.
wood table, the holy table?
Well, some of them in the UK are Tesco's and things, like our supermarket chains
Oh my gosh, really?
Because they get sold off. So you go in and you buy your £3 meal deal, and there's like a big stained glass window next to you and stuff.
That's crazy. See, I'll have to. I need to get back over to the UK. I've only been there once, so.
I've never been there.
Well, listen, guys, I'm going to have to go. I hate to say I've got to go to Spectrum to get 2 TV boxes, but I really appreciate that you guys came on, and maybe we could do this again sometime.
You know, you're at peak right now, 108. You want to close a live stream at its peak?
I know. I hate this. I don't even care about these TV boxes.
That's okay. No, it's fun. Thanks for letting me on.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for coming in. You guys want to have any last closing thoughts? You want the audience to know about you or anything you got coming up?
Trent destroyed Doug in this debate. We clearly saw the truth of Catholicism, and
my thoughts of the debate is I am sincerely glad I did it. This was not my comfort zone, and but I think it went okay, and I think I got my main point across, that we are the same in so many ways, and I wanted us to come together, and I do hope that someday Trent will have a conversation with me, just like I am with SJ right now. Like, that's the main reason why I did it. So,
yeah, I think he will. I
hope you're right.
He will. Yeah, and I'm gonna have to go back and listen to your Greg Kukel conversation. So,
is it Kukel or Kokel? I always call him Kokel.
Oh, is it Kokel? Okay, shoot. If
I don't know. I don't know which is the right one.
I think it's Kokel.
I think you're right. I think I'm wrong. So, in fact, it sounds better to say Kokel than Kukel.
Well, it reminds me of a cereal, Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Great Cocoa Puffs.
So, all righty, you guys. You have a great day, okay?
See ya.
Everybody,
see you around.
guys, please come back. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, have fun getting your TV yesterday.
Thank you.